Hi again, Stan here. Welcome to Chapter 2 of my travelogue, the tour of the Sussex Coast Road. In this one, we are traveling along the English Channel from Winchelsea to Hastings. Recorded history here goes back to the time of William the Conqueror, and earlier too, to the Saxons and Vikings. Come on along, and let's see what we can find. About 2 miles down the A259 from Rye is the little seaside town of Winchelsea. The original town was destroyed by sea erosion and floods in the 13th century. At its peak, it boasted 6,000 inhabitants, due mainly to trade with Europe, wool exports, and wine imports. The new town, ordered-built on a grid layout by King Edward I, was constructed in 1288. It was attacked by French and Spanish invaders, suffered the Black Death, then the cliffs eroded again, and finally the shore shifted, leaving Winchelsea without a harbor. No luck at all. We stopped in the town centre to see the church of St. Thomas the Martyr, named for Thomas Becket, who was murdered at Canterbury Cathedral in 1170. Part of the church is in ruins due to one of the French invasions, but a large part was beautifully restored in Victorian times. Inside the church we found 5 effigies under beautifully carved canopies. Wandering around in the graveyard, we came upon the 2002 grave of Spike Milligan. A couple miles southwest on the A259 brings us to the ancient village of Icklesham, where we spotted the windmill on the top of Hogg's Hill. This was used by Paul McCartney as a recording studio. Another few miles through picturesque farmland gets us to our next destination. Although the Normans landed at Pevensey, down the coast to the west, and the battle took place 8 miles northeast of the town, Hastings is known in history for the battle where King William conquered England in 1066. When the A259 reaches the sea in Hastings, turning left, we find the Rockinore area. The shingle beach here is called the Stade, Saxon for landing place. For hundreds of years, and still in operation today, is the beach-launched fishing fleet, purported to be the largest in Europe. Because of the unstable seabed here, any attempt to build a harbor has been met with failure. The groins were built in the 1800s to keep the beach from moving. It worked so well that the beach was actually grown and created more room for more fish boats. The distinctive tall black wooden structures along the beach are fishnet huts. Contrary to popular belief, they are not used to dry hanging fish nets. This is done in the sun on the beach. These buildings are used for net storage. They were built multi-story because there originally was not enough room on the beach. Black tar was used to seal the buildings from the weather. The Fisherman Museum tells you all about this. Across the road we have one of Hastings' 2 funicular railways, the East Hill Lift. Opened in 1902, has the steepest gradient in England at 38 degrees. It is now run by electricity, but until the 1970s, it used water as a counterbalance to move the cars up and down. The car at the top filled its 600-gallon tank, while the one at the bottom was empty. The heavier car at the top pulled the bottom one up, where the procedure was reversed. At the top, we find East Hill Park, where we get great views of the town and beach. For the lovers of funicular railways, you can duplicate the experience further along at West Hill. At the base station of the East Hill Railway is a peculiar conical-shaped structure with a sign that says, "Waste not, want not." The natural spring here is called East Well, and the water can be accessed from a tap. In 1846, a fire destroyed some of the fishermen's net sheds. Money was raised to replace them, and there was some cash left over. So in 1848, Dr. McCabe raised more money and built a 1,500-gallon reservoir for public use. There is a story that a fisherman used the well as his legal address when signing documents. Most of the old town was built in the 19th century, and the narrow streets and character buildings and shops give the place a lovely Victorian feel. The streets are filled with great antique stores, galleries, second-hand shops, and some pretty oldie-world pubs and restaurants. Hastings was used as the backdrop for the British TV series called Foyle's War, a perfect setting for the 1940s. One last thing that gives this town the old Victorian tourist feel is the promenade. On one side is the channel, and on the other are the terraced houses built by the rich and famous at the time. Most look well maintained, but the old summer houses have been converted into flats, small hotels, B&Bs, and restaurants. Further west, we can look up and see the ruins of the castle built by William the Conqueror. By taking Hastings' second funicular railway, we get up to the castle and West Hill. Over its 900-year history, the castle has not had much luck. William ordered the building of a wooden castle even before the battle. 2 years later, he ordered it to be rebuilt in stone. It changed hands a few times until 1287, when storms caused the cliffs to collapse, taking part of the castle with it. Over the next 100 years, it was attacked and burned by the French twice, and more of it crumbled as the cliff continued to deteriorate. By the end of the 16th century, it was overgrown and mostly forgotten about until 1824, when it was dug out and partially restored. To add insult to injury, it was bombed by the Germans in World War II. Today, it is a great place to explore and enjoy the views along the coast beyond Hastings. Hastings Pier has had a very unique history, with many high points as well as many lows. It has seen fires, storms, and unstable supports. On the good side, it has been saved from destruction several times, has seen crowds coming for great entertainment, and been awarded prizes for design. Here are some of its stories over the last 150 years. It was designed by Eugenius Birch, who also designed Brighton and Eastbourne piers, and was officially opened in 1872. It was immediately very popular with the tourists. The ballroom at the end of the pier, which could accommodate 2,000 people, was destroyed by fire in 1917. The safe was located by the pier's diver 3 days later, completely intact. Several other offices were also lost, including all the local fishing club's angling equipment and the costumes for the aristocrats, the pier's resident troupe. It took almost 5 years to replace everything. The 1930s turned out to be the heydays for the pier, attracting London day trippers, holiday makers, and locals. Additional buildings, including a theater, were added with the popular Art Deco designs. The pavilion at the end of the pier was rebuilt to include a ballroom, a bar, and a cafe. Open-air terraces on the first floor provided the visitors with great views of the channel and the town of Hastings. World War II put an abrupt end to this as the pier was closed for fear that the invading Germans would use it as part of their landing. Some of the planking was removed to impede any invaders. After the war, it returned to the popularity of the 30s. Through the 1960s and 70s, the pavilion became a major player in the contemporary rock music history. It hosted Welsh crooner Tom Jones, guitar legend Jimi Hendrix, rock bands like the Stones, The Who, Genesis, 10 Years After, and so many more. It really was the place to be. In 1966, the 900th anniversary of the Battle of Hastings, the Hastings Embroidery was commissioned to show 81 separate scenes in British history since 1066. To exhibit this 243-foot tapestry, the bandstand was replaced by a circular white building called the Triodome. Later, this dome housed a zoo and then an amusement arcade. In 1986, it was disassembled and sold for scrap. Later that year, it turned up at the end of the Brighton Palace Pier. In 1990, a severe storm did £1 million worth of damage and weakened the superstructure. In 2006, it was closed by the local council because the supports were found to be unstable. Repairs were done and it was open for a while and then closed again. In 2009, the charity Save the Pier raised enough money to open the pier again, but disaster struck again a year later. when suspected arson destroyed most of the wooden superstructure. With repairs to the support structure and the deck reconstructed, it was reopened to the public in 2016. In 2017, it won the Pier of the Year award. So once again, the big pier is attracting crowds enjoying a day out at the sea. That's it for Chapter 2. I hope you enjoyed this part of the tour of the Sussex coast. If you did, please press the like button, share this with your friends, and by subscribing, you'll be informed when the next chapter is published, where we carry on to St. Leonard's and Bexhill. If you're interested in getting a copy of the book, please check out the link in the description below. Thanks for joining me. Bye for now.